remember reading and then hearing about Reverend Peter Morales' insights into repelling fewer newcomers back in 2005. Well, stimulating membership growth is a bellwether of a successful ministry in any religious organization. I was especially interested back then because the Unitarian Universalist congregation I served up in Albany had finished a capital campaign and was implementing an ambitious building expansion project. They were expanding their seating capacity to anticipate membership growth. I would be needing to fill those seats. As part of my first sabbatical in the following winter of 2006, I visited Morales' congregation in Golden, Colorado, and spoke with him, with their membership professional, and with volunteers and members of the congregation. I found that they did have some good methods that I brought back to Albany that are a little more well-known today than they were then. The most important message for me from that visit was moving beyond welcome. For those of you here today who were not raised in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, yes, that's right. For those of you who are here today who were not raised in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, already know a lot about welcoming newcomers because you experienced it yourself. You may remember how intimidating and scary it was to walk into a congregation for the first time, sit down in an unfamiliar seat with people that you didn't know, and participate in a service that might be new to you. It takes curiosity, a little bit of self-assurance, and a lot of courage to put oneself in what can feel like a very vulnerable position. If you are here for the first time today, congratulations for being willing to take this risk. Most of our membership had this same experience too. Sadly, the discomfort of that first experience for many of us may have caused us not to pay attention to what made us feel welcomed and what didn't. Or maybe you've forgotten. Here are 4 reminders of what doesn't work. Not being noticed is number 1. One of the worst experiences for a visitor is being ignored. Some congregations have special coffee mugs for visitors that can signal that they're newcomers. And that is then a signal for the introverted members of the congregation, not on the membership committee, to avoid them. Yes, there are visitors who come into our service after it started, sit in the back row, and then scoot out before the service ends, trying not to be noticed. Nowadays, those people show up to our service on Zoom. Most people, however, who come in person come with a hunger to make personal connections and build a sense of community with people who share their values. Number 2, getting too much attention. In small congregations, visitors stand out because everyone knows everyone else. Visitors are often asked to stand and introduce themselves. We don't do that. Then, after the service, They are mobbed by members who want them to sign up for something, or if they show some signs of life, maybe we could put them on the board. These members are less interested in who the visitor is, but rather what that person can do to keep the congregation alive. Number 3, member confusion. In larger congregations, everyone doesn't know everyone else's name, and longtime members sometimes might use a paper name tag because they've left their official name tag at home on their dresser. Members often don't talk to someone if they don't recognize them for fear of the embarrassment of mistaking a pillar of the congregation for a newcomer. It's very embarrassing. And then 4th, social awkwardness. Meeting new people is an art. Most of us have a small circle of friends and avoid talking to strangers, just like our caregivers directed us. If that person is a lot older maybe, or a lot younger, appears to be visually or culturally different from us, the barriers are higher. Again, it takes courage to walk up to someone who's a stranger to you and begin the exploration for potential connections. For those of you who would like a quick coaching session on how to talk to somebody that you don't know and be successful, here are 8 suggestions. Number 1, smile often. Nothing invites a conversation like a smile. 2, choose hospitality. The intentional choice to be inclusive rather than exclusive can make every stranger feel accepted. 3, respect boundaries, physical closeness or distance, and touch. 4, listen. Attentive, reflective listening can make others feel appreciated. 5, avoid assumptions. Rather than assuming someone's newcomer status or just that you haven't met, initiate the conversation with a greeting and request to get to know the other person better. 6, seek commonality. Rather than focus on differences, an open-ended conversation likely will lead to a commonality that can lead to deeper conversation. 7, be curious with a caring attitude. Seek the inherent worth, dignity, and value in the other person and cherish it. And 8, hold them in your heart and wish for them happiness, freedom, peace, safety, and ease. What members and visitors may not realize about each other is the connections they have just by being in a Unitarian Universalist congregation at all. Less than 1% of the population identifies as such. So we are already a rare breed. The constellation of values that permit one to step through the doors here for the first time are quite unusual and specific. Just being here at all strongly suggests a shared sense of values. Unfortunately, what begins to interfere on the 2nd or 3rd visit is culture. Unitarianism and Universalism, they merged in 1961. Each one had a long history before that evolved out of Protestant Christianity, that evolved out of Catholicism, that evolved basically out of Judaism. Today, UUism is a non-creedal religious tradition that does not impose a belief system or requirement to believe or reject the Jewish or Christian conception of God. We do not claim one sacred text exclusively, nor do we reject them as sources of truth and wisdom. We tend to like scientific rationalism, yet we also recognize the limits of this way of knowing all that is true or false. That said, our Sunday morning worship experience will feel familiar to anyone who has attended a Presbyterian, Methodist, Lutheran, or a Baptist Christian church. It will feel a little less familiar if you come from a Reformed Jewish background. And it may not feel familiar at all for those from an Islamic, Hindu, Buddhist, pagan, or many other religious traditions. The message or sermon, the explication of the word, is culturally Protestant. Its centrality in our worship experience is because both Unitarianism and Universalism evolved out of Puritan Calvinism in the late 18th and early 19th century. The humanist movement that defines many of our congregations evolved in both traditions in the early 20th century. The pluralistic perspective that we experience in our congregations today evolved in the second half of the 20th century. Unitarian Universalism needed to become pluralistic to embrace the fullness of the merger of our two traditions and grow beyond those limitations of both as a new religious tradition. We are still a very young faith that is still growing and evolving to make room for all of us. Both traditions have always chosen to include rather than exclude people and widen our faith in each other. One of the ways Unitarian Universalism continues to grow and evolve is recognizing and deconstructing the presence of white supremacy culture in our congregations. How could it not be here? As both Unitarianism and Universalism grew up with and became identified with the creation of this nation. The Unitarian churches in Boston and the Universalist churches in the South were all complicit in the slave economy. To our credit, abolition won the day in our churches, but not without a fight. And many of our churches in the South went along with Jim Crow, and many northern churches were silent about the oppression they witnessed. The culture of white supremacy is deeply embedded in how things are done throughout American society. This has become much more apparent to many of us in the last 30 years as our Unitarian Universalist Association and many of our congregations have examined and exposed practices at all levels of our association that reinforce white supremacy culture. Let me speak very personally about this. I've participated in many workshops, dialogues, and classes to help me recognize how racism works subliminally in my mind to shape my emotions and my reactions. This is programming that I absorbed from the culture without realizing it. The fact that my parents were both racial justice activists didn't stop my programming from the media, from schools, from social interactions. And it's painful and embarrassing to recognize attitudes and behaviors in me that don't match my values. As a wise, beloved black man named Archie taught me, who's now gone, it is not your fault. It is not your fault that you've been socially programmed to be racist. It is your responsibility, especially when you recognize it in yourself, to do something about it. Okay, so far I've outlined for you the barriers to inclusion in our congregations. They are substantial if you are not a white identified cisgender heterosexual neurotypical able-bodied person. Yet, the professed vision of Unitarian Universalism articulated in our 2024 Statement of Identity in our new association bylaws, Article 2, states, we celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. How do we make this beautiful language real in our congregations? How much are we willing to let go of our cultural attachments and open to another culture? Can we allow our shared values to form the basis of mutual trust? Can we allow our values, our shared values, to form the basis of mutual trust and security in place of cultural tribalism, in place of cultural tribalism? How much are we willing to listen beyond words and be curious and respectful of the meaning behind them for others? Words like God, worship, prayer, faith, reason, science, evidence, evolution, natural, supernatural. It says, we embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. I would love us to repeat that sentence to each other over and over again. This powerful statement holds the key to offering the kind of welcome I know each one of us would want if we walked into this congregation for the first time. If you want to do something to welcome newcomers and something for the well-being of this congregation, just remember just these three words: love, curiosity, and respect. Put them on your bathroom mirror and on your refrigerator door at eye level. If we could just practice these three words faithfully, it would transform this congregation, and we'd have trouble making enough room for everyone who would want to be here. These three words are foundational for building beloved community. And forget being perfect at loving, respectful curiosity. Forget it. We will continue to fail at one or two or all three. All of us have been hurt. All of us are attached to our points of view. Few, if any of us, know just how big and powerful love can be in our lives. That is why we are here. Here to learn and grow into these life-transforming values in the context of a religious community dedicated to them with love at the center. If this is the first time you've come in our doors, may you receive and feel a wide welcome beyond our personal limitations. If you've been here a long time, and like me, my entire life, may you offer a wide welcome stretching beyond your personal limitations. May that welcome be offered in love, curiosity, and respect for the benefit of all. So be it.